From this point on, every speech in the course is going to require what's called a formal outline. The formal outline is a written version of your entire speech, and it has to follow certain structural guidelines. So a formal outline is written in complete sentences. There's no bullet points in a formal outline. Think of the formal outline as something that you would give to someone who wants to hear your speech, but they weren't there when you delivered it, and nobody was recording it. So the formal outline is essentially word for word what you wrote, what you want to say. And it has to be written in complete sentences. Bullet points are not allowed. Sentence fragments are not allowed. There are many rules for formal outlines, and I'm going to walk through these with you now. So, an example of what not to do. Formal outlines. You would not say hobbies. That's not a sentence. That's a sentence fragment. It's a word. It's a bullet point. It does not belong on a formal outline. An accurate way to do that, an acceptable way would be Roman numeral 2 and then a sentence. Now I'll tell you about my hobbies. That's a sentence. So you have to write a formal outline in complete sentences. Use the outline example that I put on Blackboard. You can actually keep all those points and numerals and everything on there and just erase my text. You can do that if you want. You're invited to do that. Or follow the example in the textbook on pages 183 to 185. If there's anything that is not common knowledge, it must include a citation, a parenthetical reference immediately after what you said. And then you also have to have a works cited list or a bibliography at the end. So here's an example that does not have a proper citation. Murphy was the highest paid athlete in the United States in the 1800s. Not a common fact. Nobody knows this. So you have to have a citation for it. Now the citation in your parentheses would just say village. That was the source where I got this information from. It's from a book called Village of Fairfield and Thoroughbred Racing and Automobiles, or something like that. I can't remember the name of the book, but it's on my bibliography. So you would include just the word village in your formal outline in the parentheses. However, for the bibliography, you would have that full name of the book and the author and the date of publication and the location of where it was published. You would have all of those things at the end in your works cited list. All right, so formal outlines require this. This is one of the things I really take off points for frequently. Do not let Microsoft Word format your paper. Roman numerals are for your main points. Capital letters are for your subpoints. After capital letters, you would have Arabic numerals for your subpoints. So that's like our number one. And then lowercase letters after that, subpoints, I would call them. All right, so remember this too. For every outline, if you have a 1, you also have to have a 2. If you have an A, you have to have a B. You can't just leave them hanging by themselves. So if you look at this example, that's Roman numeral 1, that's your main point. Capital letter A would be a subpoint. Then you have subpoints 1 and 2, and then subpoint B, followed by main point 2. So that's the proper way of doing it. Let's take a look at an example of what not to do. This one does not have a B. It goes Roman numeral 1 to A, 1 and 2, and then it goes to Roman numeral 2. Where's the B? And then point 2, main point 2, has an A, and then a 1, and then a B. It's missing something. Look at this and make sure you follow that properly. Another thing, every sentence in the body of the speech, this is not the case for the introduction or for the summary, but for the body of the speech, every sentence needs to be outlined as a separate subpoint. Here's an example of what not to do. Subpoint A. I had my first car crash just 2 weeks after my 18th birthday. A dog ran out in front of the car, and I swerved. I hit my neighbor's parked car. How many sentences are there? 1, 2, 3. So that should be 3 different points outlined differently. So we could do it this way. My first accident, or just after my 18th birthday, that's a subpoint. I'm going to give details of that subpoint in the next 2 headings, the next 2 subpoints. 1, a dog ran out in front of the car. 2, I hit my neighbor's parked car. And then I move on to subpoint B. I had my second car crash 2 months later. I would follow that up with 1 and 2 and give details about that. All right, so these are examples of what to do and what not to do. Now, that's a formal outline. Your speech also needs a speaking outline. A speaking outline is much shorter. Nobody sees that except you. In my class. In other classes, the professors actually collect your speaking cards so that they will be able to grade those as well. I don't do that, just my preference. My boss does. But speaking outlines should have bullet points. You're the only one that's going to see these. All you need is something that's going to remind you of what to say next. Don't write incomplete sentences. Just brief reminders to help you keep your train of thought. You should have rehearsed this enough times to know where to go. And then just glance at the note card. If you draw a blank and say, okay, where was I going next? That's where I'm going next. So if you want to quote somebody, you can have full notes and write those out completely, word for word. If you're quoting somebody and you don't want to mess it up, you don't want to get it wrong, write it down. That's acceptable for a speaking outline. But speaking outlines should be very short. They should be written on 1 3x5 card, maybe 2 or 3 3x5 cards. But don't have your whole speech written down, switching from one note card to the next to the next. That's too much. 1 card should do it. 3 cards for a 5-minute speech, 3 cards maximum should do the trick. All right. So that's it for outlines. I will talk more about that. And ideally, you'll get this the first time and I won't have to make a lot of corrections when I see your outlines come in and I grade them.